This is the only time I ever get to go to that. Turn around, watch it.
I'd like to welcome everybody here. This is a big day for us, folks. Big day for everybody in Buncombe County. And it's one that we thank you with honoring us with your presence. My name is David Gant. I'm the Buncombe County Commission Chair. And it's my honor on behalf of all the commissioners to welcome you and to say a few words about what we're doing. We have a very good announcement for you a little bit. We're going to be hearing about the commissioners we have here today. We have Commissioner Jones. You're going to hear from her in a minute. And we have Commissioner Frost, Commissioner Fryer, and Commissioner DeBrule. Thank you all for being here because of their votes, we're able to move ahead and do this because there is some funding you're going to hear a little bit about. But we want to thank you for the critical role that all of you play in making this happen, because this is one of the, any project like this doesn't happen without a lot of players, a lot of people who work hard. And I see people in this room that are critical parts in where we are now, where we're going to be going. Thank you to the media for being here. We appreciate you covering us. Your ability to help us spread the word and educate people and citizens about what it takes to prevent domestic violence and sexual violence is very valuable. You're the messengers that we can depend on as we work to make our community safer. I am not a victim of domestic violence, but both my mother and my sister were victims of physical and sexual abuse. I've grown up with it. It's something that I feel strongly about, as you do. And so this is a chance that we're going to have to make a difference here. We're going to take your questions after we hear from the panel. So if you could hold your questions until after the speakers are finished, I think it would make a better presentation for us. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's a great opportunity to tell our community that the Buncombe County Commissioners have come together to take a stake on the ground, throw it down, that we've had enough of domestic and sexual violence in our community. The support of the commissioners, these commissioners here and all the staff, has given us the momentum we need to have this comprehensive, coordinated response and move it and take it off the ground and get it running. This joint effort and investment between many members of our community is a testament to our belief that we can be safer and stronger together if we work together. Commissioner Jones, who you're going to hear from right now, is one of the catalysts to make this happen. I think back to times how long I've known Holly, and even when she was with the YW on the City Council, most of the conversations I've had with Commissioner Jones, there will be a time where she will say, we've got to do more to stop domestic violence. It's been a consistent theme. It's been all through her career. She's someone that has been an advocate, and she's been very effective. She was a key role in igniting this effort and getting our board to come together and move this vision forward. So it's my pleasure at this point to introduce Commissioner Holly Jones. If you'll give
I'll just speak from here. The insidious crime of domestic violence impacts in our county an estimated 3,437 victims a year. That means that over 3,400 people in our community are impacted by violence and do not feel safe, do not feel loved in their own home, in their own community. And that is a tremendous loss for all of us. there's a financial cost. The financial cost of domestic violence in our county alone in 1 year is $6.7 million. We feel it in our schools, we feel it in our hospitals, we feel it in our criminal justice center, we feel it in our health and human service agencies. Y'all feel it in law enforcement. It's very, very expensive. And then there are the health impacts of domestic violence. The documented health impacts are overwhelming, and the research showed that women who are survivors of domestic violence or sexual abuse suffer greater incidences of chronic health conditions. It's something that we don't necessarily put together, but in fact, that's what we know from the data. That's what we know from the research. They have greater incidences of lung disease, diabetes, digestive disease, and depression. And our children. What does it do to our children? Children that are exposed to this kind of violence struggle with poor coping skills, understandably. They have trouble learning in school. They have difficulty maintaining healthy relationships. And they also are at significantly higher risk of developing chronic conditions such as diabetes and asthma and heart disease as they age. And then finally, they too may also become abusers in adulthood. These are some of the reasons why this community has come together, and that's what has brought us to this place.
On behalf of all the commissioners, I call on every citizen to help end this cycle of violence. I say it again, Buncombe County says enough. We're here tonight to show our support to the victims as well as to reaffirm our commitment to laying the foundation of a violence-free future. Thank you again for the leadership and staff involved who took quick action to invest in best proven practices that can make a difference. One thing about our country, and I've been able to do a little traveling recently, we don't like bullies. We never have. And when people bully people, and we see things that aren't just, we're going to do something about it. And in Buncombe County, that's what we're going to do tonight, and we're going to do it with the help of the wonderful people with the Family Justice Center and all you partners that have made this happen working together. If any other commissioner wants to say a few words, that's good. Otherwise, we'll go on to the panel. Keep going. All right. As you know, Buncombe County Commissioners have put our resources behind the call to action in creating a Family Justice Center and supporting the infrastructure that we need to prevent this kind of violence that impacts so many people, as Commissioner Jones has said. Through strong partnerships, we've created a dedicated prosecutorial unit in the DA's office, and I see them here, and maybe Mr. Williams can talk about that. We have a specialized domestic violence unit in the Child Protective Services, and we see Angie here and Mandy can maybe talk about that a little bit. We have increased options for batterers intervention programs to increase the accountability of offenders and access to service to help them to deal with their problems. And we've supported nonprofit partner agencies in delivering the services to the victims. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do it in a very streamlined way. And you're going to hear about how we're going to cut out a lot of steps that make a bad situation even worse for victims of violence. And joining us here tonight are a group of dedicated leaders who are part of the team that's represented our community in sharing our model across the state. And the state liked it. You're going to hear about how much they liked it a little bit, who are largely responsible for the great news we have to share. So let me start off with our Sheriff Dan Duncan. Anything you'd like to say? We'd love to hear about your thoughts on this great day.
Thank you, Chairman Gant. I want to take you back a couple of years to 2013. 2013 was a very, very difficult year. 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 2013 was a very, very diffic Buncombe County saw a very violent year. We had 14 overall homicides, which was a tough year for law enforcement in Buncombe County, huge workload. As the state looks at it, we had 7 domestic violence homicides. If we look at the things that we're talking about in intimate partner relationships, there were 5 intimate partner domestic violence homicides in Buncombe County in that year. Commissioner Jones came to me after a day that I had gone to 2 back-to-back involving a murder-suicide and a murder. She said, we got to be able to do better than this. And I was a little bit at a loss. And a lot of times violent crime, like homicide, is something that's not very predictable and therefore not very preventable. But when it comes to intimate partner, domestic violence, homicides, what we found out were those things are very much predictable and therefore hopefully preventable. So we went to work on basically a collaborative effort across the county to do the things that other people were doing, best practices across the country. And we brought several of them here to Buncombe County and implemented them all at the same time and worked on implementing them. And to say that was a hard task is an understatement. Mandy Stone sat here beside me and she could tell you tons of meetings, tons of working out problems, issues, but what we saw happen every day was the process of the partners involved get better through relationship and working on situations. Now, I'm sure my friend April Burgess Johnson is going to tell you that we prevented domestic violence homicide since we started that process, and I would agree with her. We have. What I can tell you, a couple of things that immediately changed for law enforcement, and we have Weaverville with us here tonight. We have some of my folks from the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. We have Chief Hooper here from the Asheville Police Department, and some of our folks who are part of that team that have worked very diligently to get us where we are. But some of the changes that have taken place. Number one, since May 27th of this year, when an officer goes on a domestic violence call and they can determine that there is a perpetrator and a victim, there is a lethality assessment done. To this date, since May 27th, we've done over 350 lethality assessments in Buncombe County between Buncombe County, Asheville Police Department, and the city of Woodford. Every time that takes place, that officer then takes the phone and dials helpmate and puts that victim on the phone with a service provider. So that connection is immediately made. So that's, in a little over 350 cases, that's already happened. So what I can tell you in the end result is since 2014 and so far in 2015, we have not had an intimate partner in domestic violence homicide in Buncombe County. Some of those I know that we have prevented because some of the things that turned out to be high risk by the lethality assessment, we've intervened. We've stepped forward and we've looked at defusing that situation and getting that victim out of danger. And a lot of times that looks different because we have a lot of different partners at the table. It's not always an arrest. It's not always a victim being relocated, but it's always something. And it's always what the group can do and bring to the table to get the best outcome that happens for not only that victim, but for the family. So I'm really proud of the work that's been done. I'm proud of the individuals in here today because it has been a lot of hard work. But what we're seeing is there's a huge return of investment on that hard work.
Thank you, Sheriff. Next, we'll hear from District Attorney Todd Williams. Todd?
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. I appreciate the County Commission for its commitment to domestic violence. It's had a meaningful impact in our ability to do our work in enforcing Chapter 50, Chapter 15, Chapter 14 in regard to our domestic violence laws here in North Carolina, in Buncombe County. Our view, and again, I guess I'm specifically addressing the domestic violence trial unit that we're implementing through county support. Our view, number one, is our focus is prosecution. Our focus is to prosecute these crimes to the best of our ability. Your assistance is going to assist us in doing that. our thesis here is victim support and offender accountability are inextricably linked. And that's because of the nature of domestic violence. As has already been mentioned, domestic violence is an insidious crime that occurs under the cover of darkness, behind closed doors at night, where the only witness quite often, the only witness is the victim. So we need to get that victim into the courthouse and support them, bolster their courage, keep their backbone up, and help them understand what they're facing as they come to court. And we need to intervene, we need to be present for them at an early stage. So the nature of the offense requires a unique approach, which requires additional manpower. That's the purpose and point of the Domestic Violence Trial Unit. In the past, we've had a specialized, I guess, domestic violence court or committed courtroom in the courthouse on Wednesday mornings in district court. I just want to kind of paint a picture of how things are going to change. We've had a judge in that courtroom, of course. We've had a district attorney in that courtroom, a victim witness legal assistant in that courtroom, a panoply of lawyers, defense attorneys, victims, and the accused, all in that one courtroom. I've been in there numerous times. It's a stew of conflict, perhaps gumption, commitment, but also, I want this over. My boss is on me. I need to get out of here. With only one ADA in that courtroom, victims may come to court, have their name called, the case is continued, and they've had no real contact with our office. So this is what the Domestic Violence Trial Unit is attempting. And we will strive to bolster. We will have somebody in the Family Justice Center to coordinate with helpmate and law enforcement at an early stage so that we can get information to our prosecutors in district court. This is the offender accountability piece. For that first appearance, to seek the right pretrial conditions of pretrial release, the appropriate bond, electronic monitoring if appropriate, and carry that case through the process, through district court, through superior court when that's needed, a jury trial. So that victim feels the support. We're also, I believe we're going to coordinate with the county to produce a video and helpmate so that victims will understand that, the wheels of justice grind kind of slowly. Go to your employer, let them know that you might have to be out, several mornings, 2 or 3 mornings before we get some adjudication. But with that, with the victim being armed with that knowledge from the outset, we hope to get them to court. That's our case. When they feel supported, we'll have a case to prosecute. That will result in fewer dismissals and hopefully greater protection for our community. So that's in a nutshell, it's more boots on the ground and better service for victims of domestic violence.
Thank you, Todd. Next, we'll hear from April Burgess Johnson, the Executive Director of HelpMate.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I want to start by saying how grateful I am to live and work in Buncombe County in the city of Asheville. I think that the County Commission has shown incredible leadership in addressing this issue that impacts people's lives and families in so many ways. So once again, thank you so much for your investment. And thank you to all of these community partners who are really looking at ways that we can overhaul our system to make this a safer place to live, work, and play together. I want to talk just a little bit about a partnership that's created aimed at medical providers. The idea around this coordinated community response is that we think about every possible entry point that a victim, a survivor of domestic violence might have to be able to get help. Sometimes that's through calling our dedicated law enforcement officers or going to the court to seek protection. Sometimes that's through our Department of Social Services. Sometimes that's through their family doctor. And we want to be sure that anywhere a survivor goes, they are asked the right questions and given the right resources to get help. So in addition to implementing all of these nationally recognized evidence-based practices that you all have heard about, we're also creating some. We have partnered with Helpmate, MAHEC, and Buncombe County Department of Health and Human Services, work together to create a training curriculum for medical providers that allow them to have universal screening for domestic violence, and also to recognize both those clinical and behavioral signs that somebody might be a victim, so that they can intervene quickly and get somebody over to help early, because we know that early intervention is something that improves outcome, that diminishes the impact of trauma, and ultimately saves lives. So when we put that curriculum together, it was noticed across the state. And so now we're party to a project that is headed by the North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence, where they've chosen Buncombe County and a hospital, a UNC hospital in Chapel Hill, to try to replicate the work that we're doing here statewide. And also to take our training curriculum and evaluate its impact as we choose 4 or 5 local medical practices to implement and have deeper training and support, and track the results that those practices experience over time. So again, it's just another place where Buncombe County really is leading the way for change on behalf of survivors of domestic and sexual violence.
Thank you, April. Next, I recognize Nidra Warren Wilson, who's board chair of our boards. Nidra?
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be invited and to be included on this panel this evening. I'm standing in for Onika Web, who's our executive director and is enjoying a little bit of time with her family this week. Our voice is so pleased also to work with Helpmate, our sister agency. We receive a lot of support from Helpmate, and we hope in turn that we provide support to victims of domestic violence as well, because so often the two cross. And we need to have a good, strong working relationship with Helpmate and with all the folks and agencies represented on this panel. It is both of these issues, domestic violence and sexual violence, they're not in a vacuum. And we need to have a good working relationship with everyone in the community so that we can then help that victim survive and thrive after the assault. We have many programs at Our Voice that we feel strongly about and that help victims of sexual violence. We would like you to know that we do have Spanish-speaking counselors, and that we also have a male counselor, because 1 out of 6 males are affected by sexual violence, 1 out of 3 females. So we are open 24/7, as is Helpmate, and available to help anyone who has concerns, who has been assaulted, is victimized, either a primary or secondary victim. I'm a native of Asheville. I grew up in this town, and I still have family here, even though I'm living just a little bit further out of the city. To see what this group of people have put together for this Justice Center makes me extraordinarily pleased and proud. I think this is an incredible organization that we're putting together, and I think that across the state, people will be saying, well, we would like to have a family justice center. How did Asheville do it? And before long, across the country, they'll be asking the same thing as well. This is a really extraordinary effort by this group of people. And there may be other justice centers, but I believe this one is going to be the example of how to do it right. So I want to thank each and every one of you for putting this together. I have not worked to put it together. I will just be able to, our agency will benefit from it. Certainly Angelica has worked very hard, but let me just take this moment to thank each and every one of you.
Thank you, Nidra. My feet are swelling thinking about the long mile in the shoes, which I think
Oh,
nice little role reversal in that.
Yes.
That's good. Next, we're going to hear from Julie Nicholson. She is going to be the big kahuna at this Family Justice Center. She's going to be our coordinator, and we could not have done better. She has a vision, she has the knowledge, she knows the best practices, and we're going to try to give her the resources to make those best practices happen and minimize the damage that has been done when domestic violence happens. So, Julie?
Thank you, and I'm actually going to use the podium. I've got some pictures to show y'all. Thank you, Chairman Gant. Thank you, Commissioners. So deeply appreciate your support of this work. As you've heard this evening, partners in Buncombe County have come together to create a coordinated community response to domestic and sexual violence. You've been hearing about some of the programs that we are implementing in this coordinated community response. I want to offer a little bit of a framework. As we've researched best practices across the nation, we've pulled in several different strategies. Those strategies focus into 5 focus areas. The first is cross-system dialogue. As Sheriff Duncan shared, we've been meeting a lot. We've been talking. We've been communicating across systems and across agencies so that we understand each other better and can better help coordinate our services around victims. We're working on community engagement, from training healthcare providers, as April talked about, reaching out to the faith community, business leaders, and you will see this month everywhere our Enough campaign that shows victims that we have had enough in Buncombe County. There is help and there is hope. And that campaign also speaks to perpetrators, that we have had enough. Domestic violence will not be tolerated in Buncombe County. As the Sheriff talked about, we're working on high-risk interventions, the lethality assessment protocol, helping to identify those cases where victims are most at risk of high violence and fatalities. And we're increasing offender accountability. We're investing in batterers intervention programs. As DA Williams spoke about, we are creating a specialized prosecution unit focused on these most serious crimes. Together, the partners in this coordinated community response are reducing domestic and sexual violence. We are preventing domestic violence homicides, and we are making Buncombe County a safer place for all of our citizens. I want to talk for a minute about survivor services and how we're improving those systems. As we researched these best practices, we created our plans for a coordinated community response. Many of the service providers in Buncombe County, from Our Voice and Helpmate, Pisgah Legal Services, got together to take a look at what does it look like for a victim to access services, to be able to escape abuse and get the help that they need to build a safe and stable future for their family. We use the story of Sophia to evaluate what the system looks like and how it feels for a victim to access services. Sophia was a young mom. She had 2 children and had recently moved to Buncombe County, so was very isolated. Her husband was abusive, both physically and sexually. She had one contact, and that was the neighbor who sometimes took care of the kids. One night, her husband came home. He physically assaulted her. He dragged her into the bedroom and sexually assaulted her, and the kids ran to the neighbor's house for help. The neighbor called law enforcement. When law enforcement responded to the scene, it was disclosed that he was also abusing their children. So we looked at Sophia's story and said, what does she need to do to get help? In the first 3 days after a victimization like that, in Buncombe County in 2014, she would have had to fill out 61 forms, travel 8 times, and Sophia was lucky because Sophia had a car that she had access to. She'd have to make 5 phone calls, talk to 21 different people, tell her most shameful experience to 21 people as she's experiencing trauma and crisis. She waits 12 times and receives 30 referrals. Most of those were back and forth to the same agencies. And some victims give up. They never get help. Now let me be clear, these service providers are incredible. They were delivering high quality victim services, but we were working in a fragmented system. As we do in Buncombe County, we looked at this and we said, we can do better. And we identified a family justice center. A family justice center is a national best practice model. It provides a one-stop shop for victims. So instead of traveling 8 times and talking to 21 different people, Sophia walks into one building. She sits down on a couch in a living room-like room, and the service providers come to her. She gets explained what services are available, and she can access legal services. She can access child protective services. She'll be able to make a criminal report. She can access therapy, and will all be in a trauma-focused, victim-centered location. We're also really excited for the investment that Mission Hospital is making in our Family Justice Center. We will have on-site sexual assault nurse examiners, forensic examiners who can provide trauma-informed services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault without having to go through the emergency department at the hospital. Research shows that there are significant benefits to a family justice center in a community. We'll see increased arrest and prosecution of offenders. As DA Williams mentioned, when victims are supported, they are more likely to follow through on prosecution. Reduced fear and anxiety for victims and their family. We will increase victim safety. We'll eliminate the duplication of services and create a more efficient service delivery model. And most importantly, eventually we will reduce domestic and sexual violence in our community. But most importantly, Sophia and the 3,000 other Sophias in Buncombe County every year will have one place to go, where victim services providers integrate their care around her needs, instead of asking her to navigate a fragmented system. We plan to open the doors of the Family Justice Center in early 2016. We're excited that our law enforcement partners, Buncombe County Sheriff's Department and Asheville Police Department, will be moving in early December. And until our doors are open, Our Voice, Helpmate, and our other service providers stand ready to offer help to victims. Any victim that needs services can call Helpmate or Our Voice, and they will get the help that they need today. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones to make an announcement on behalf of all the towns.
So we have brought you all together to share some, not just one piece of good news, but 2 pieces of good news. Because of the leadership and the willingness of Buncombe County and what we have been able to demonstrate for us investing in this work, investing in it first. The North Carolina Governor's Crime Commission has announced that they will invest approximately $1.4 million to increase the availability of services to victims in Buncombe County over the next 2 years. Okay, okay, 1,400,000. Yes, and with this funding, and this part is just so exciting to me too. This funding and investment, Buncombe County gets to make it in the nonprofit partners, and we'll be able to directly and immediately help the victims escape abuse, access counseling, access legal services, advocacy, and all the other supports that they're going to need to rebuild their lives. This grant will help us serve clients quickly, and as we spread the message that domestic violence is not tolerated in our community. Because we have such an awesome staff, they did not stop in telling our story with the Governor's Crime Commission. They kept right on going. And so we received word this week also that Buncombe County received an investment of almost $500,000 from the U.S. Department of Justice from the Office on Violence Against Women to provide security and technology in the Family Justice Center over the next 2 years. so excited, if you can't tell, that the work that we're doing here in Buncombe County is being recognized statewide and nationally. And we've been able to leverage our local investment to bring almost $2 million. I'm looking at the queen here. The woman who has been the orchestra director and brought the parties together to talk out, to hash it out, to figure it out, to think out of the box. Mandy Stone has really been the person that has held us all together and kept us all together, and we're so grateful that we have this announcement because of you, Mandy. You've been So now I'm looking at my script, and we kind of went off script a little bit.
Chairman missed the script a lot.
No, the chairman did awesome. The chairman did great. So would this be a good time to see what questions you might have about this fantastic investment in this fantastic work? And I'll and then we'll let the orchestra leaders speak too. So.
No, I'm good. We just wanted to answer questions, I think, as a panel, and we have lots of experts in the audience that can jump in as they need to. There are questions.
I'll kick it off, not with a question, but to follow up what Holly has said. You know, the commissioners can get credit, but basically it's the staff. And what Mandy has done is what's gotten all of us here. So we can give credit, but we have to give credit where credit is due to Mandy and her great staff.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rice.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good news. Thank you for everything. Question is, do you have the enforcement and the personnel and everything that you need in place and the predictability of what the future might hold within the 5-year, long-range plan, and how much that's going to take and who's going to provide the money and all that? So money don't work if we don't have something to put it to.
Sure. What we've seen with the other best practice models, Jerry, is that we see an influx in the reporting and the awareness, but in almost every situation where we've adopted those best practices from these places, they see a reduction in domestic violence crime. One of the things, and I'll answer the question before it's asked, so we're already making an impact, so why continue to build a family justice center and continue on that route? Well, the relationships that we've built, the working relationships that we continue to get better at, are making us better at what we do across the board anytime that we meet as law enforcement, DSS, victims, advocates, their service providers. We're getting better at what we do. But by having that family justice center in place, when I'm gone, when Holly's gone, Chairman Gant's gone, when Mandy's gone, when April's gone, there is that physical structure that keeps everybody there together, working those relationships and working in that fashion to keep the crime rate down when it comes to family violence and this type of crime.
The only thing I might add to that, Jerry, is we've been very strategic in applying for grants that they are not dollars. We have to survive. They're very much invested in the startup. And if you look at the national research, the #1 reason family justice centers fail is the lack of infrastructure investment. And that's the piece the commissioners have committed to by dedicating the 35 Woodfin site and providing that space rent-free and renovated to the providers. So we really have depended and are grateful for these grants to help us put it on the ground. But we're also have a backup plan so that services won't be impacted when grant dollars go away.
Good.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, in my time in government, when you have a program that really works and everybody's on board, it keeps going. These grants aren't going to come every year, but we have excited the state and national interest in what we're doing, because it is is groundbreaking to put it all in one place, all under one roof, all these different people working toward justice and making sure we minimize the impact of domestic and sexual violence. Good programs become more efficient, they will last because it's going to be successful. We got the right players, we're convinced. And so I think it will cost less over time, and people just, I think you'll see future commissions continue to want to be part of a successful program like this because it's going to make a difference. And then once everybody is touched by it, and hopefully there won't be that many people touched, but there will. I mean, we're going to have customers whether we want to or not. That will increase the demand for this to continue going. So we're not going to get $2 million every year. We know that. But we're going to get a lot to get it going. We're going to do it the right way. These folks have really done the homework to make sure they've got the best practices. And those kind of programs do stand the test of time, at least in my experience.
And if I could tag on, you know, in terms of where you invest, it's a costly thing, and I'm sure the sheriff would say this, to investigate and then to prosecute a homicide. And when we live in a community that went from having 5 intimate partner domestic violence homicides in a year to none over almost a 2-year period, we need to think about not just the savings of life, but the savings of cost associated with that as well. And we know that these things are working because we've seen the reduction in homicides and we've seen a corresponding increase, a steep increase in usage of victim services. Just at Helpmate, over a 2-year period, we've seen an increase of 156% in crisis calls that we received. We went from receiving 1,200 to over 3,400 crisis calls per year. That really says to me that victims are more aware of our services and that they're more comfortable reaching out, and that all of these service providers are working together in a network to really create a safe landing zone for victims so that we can intervene quickly, swiftly, and strongly to prevent these homicides.
And I wanted to add one other thing about this investment now and brag on this. We sent a road show down to Raleigh, and I'm sure you've all been impressed today hearing each one of them speak. And boy, were they impressed in Raleigh too. They recognized the hard work and the smart thinking and the vision. And that was part of the reward of the grant, but also it was awarded because there's something here that can go out to other counties in North Carolina. And so they saw in this model, in what was happening here, and the lessons that we had learned. And we hadn't done everything perfect, most. But that's part of it. You learn as you develop these things. You find that this worked pretty good, this needs to be changed. But the lessons that we've learned here will be able to be replicated in other parts of our state. And so that is going to not only save lives and make people more whole in Buncombe County, but it's going to spin off around into other places in our state. And that's a big part of why the Governor's Crime Commission invested a big dollar amount in Buncombe County for what else can happen around North Carolina.
All right, any other questions? Closing comments, April or Julie?
Well, I'd just love to invite everybody to the Domestic Violence Awareness Vigil that's happening in City County Plaza at 7 o'clock. We'll be honoring lives lost across the state and talking some more about the good work that's being done in Buncombe County.
All right, any other questions? Final call. Thank you all for coming and hope to see you at the dinner.